It was supposed to be the day the world finally saw a white flag raised over the Montecito mansion. Just hours earlier, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had reportedly sat across from mediators to sign a permanent framework of peace. It was simple, structured, and laid out the terms for custody, travel, and education. But as the sun rose the next morning, the illusion of peace shattered into a million jagged pieces. Before the ink had even dried, Meghan launched what royal insiders are calling the most aggressive legal counter-strike the monarchy has ever faced. Less than 24 hours after a signed peace treaty, the world was plunged back into a war that makes every previous royal scandal look like a mere footnote. How did a modern fairy tale evolve into a forensic audit of a failed empire? And why did a mother of two allegedly craft a secret international relocation plan while the world thought she was fighting for her rights in California? Today we are pulling back the curtain on the final explosive collapse of the Sussex Empire. We are going inside the sealed courtrooms, the leaked offshore accounts, and the hidden royal protocols. But to understand the end, you have to see exactly how the first shot was fired. The moment Meghan's legal team submitted their 72-page rebuttal, the entire nature of the conflict shifted. This was no longer just a private dispute over weekend visitations. It was a clinical, calculated attempt to dismantle a prince. Meghan's team didn't just argue that the custody agreement was flawed. They claimed it was the product of severe institutional coercion directed by the highest levels of the royal family. In the legal world, this is the nuclear option. But the most jarring part of the document wasn't the attack on the crown. It was the surgical strike against Harry himself. For the first time on paper, her team revived rumors that had only ever existed in the darkest corners of the internet. They requested a full forensic reassessment of his stability, pointing to alleged incidents from years ago where he vanished during high-profile events. It felt like a total betrayal of the healing narrative they had sold to the world for years. Suddenly, the united front was gone, replaced by a devastating list of failures. Meghan was trying to flip the script using California family laws to paint herself as a blacklisted mother fighting a global institution. She didn't just want custody. She wanted a staggering monthly support payment of $187,000, claiming the royal entanglement had completely destroyed her career. But that wasn't the whole story. Because while Meghan was asking for millions, the royal accountants were about to reveal exactly where her money had been going. If the battle for the kids was the heart of this crisis, the financial disclosures were its cold, calculating nervous system. In the world of the Sussexes, image is everything. But when the financial filings hit the California Superior Court, they arrived as an 87-page autopsy of a failing brand. To the public, they were philanthropists. To the court-appointed accountants, they were a case study in unsustainable luxury. The most explosive revelation centered on a jaw-dropping $2.3 million in personal purchases made on joint credit lines. While the world watched their Netflix specials, a quiet, relentless drain was happening behind the scenes. The itemized list read like a high-end boutique inventory, nearly $500,000 on luxury fashion houses, and hundreds of thousands poured into private aviation for solo trips across the globe. Harry's legal team didn't just present these numbers. They provided the receipts. They alleged these personal luxuries were being funneled through foundation sub-accounts, with former staffers claiming invoices were retroactively labeled as brand representation. But it went deeper than credit cards. Leaked documents hinted at offshore accounts and transfers from Middle Eastern event organizers that never appeared on standard tax reports. Every dollar spent was defended by Meghan's team as an investment in her post-royal career survival. Yet as the financial reality leaked, the public sentiment began to fracture. And the British royal family was preparing a response that would prove their silence wasn't weakness, it was preparation. While the courtrooms in California were a theater of noise, the halls of Windsor remained a sanctuary of terrifying clinical silence. By mid-February, the royal household stopped reacting and started recalibrating. Under the strategic direction of Princess Anne, the palace issued a legal brief that hit the Los Angeles consulate like a shockwave. The Crown had formally appointed a royal co-guardian, creating an immediate bulletproof safety net for the children. Then came the masterstroke of soft power. Princess Kate released a simple 90-second video from the very residence prepared for the children's potential relocation. No dramatic music, no accusations, just a calm message about prioritizing innocence over inheritance. The impact was instant, amassing millions of views and violently swinging global support back to the monarchy. But the real escalation happened completely out of the public eye. Lady Louise Windsor, armed with diplomatic cover and a 2024 reciprocal treaty, touched down in California with child welfare officers. Her presence was legally bulletproof and entirely non-negotiable. She was there to observe and report, signaling to Meghan's camp that the international walls were closing in. Prince William simultaneously froze all Windsor-linked assets managed by Harry, severing the financial oxygen to the Archwell brand. The Crown was encircling Meghan with international treaties and a superior narrative of stability. But even the palace wasn't prepared for what their IT teams were about to uncover deep inside Meghan's servers. A secret that would change everything. The air inside the Santa Barbara courthouse felt incredibly heavy the morning the digital forensics team took the stand. Up until this moment, everyone believed this was a war of ideologies. But when Project Mirror was dragged into the light, the narrative shifted to something far more calculated. For weeks, Meghan's team maintained that her connections in the Middle East were purely for philanthropic brand expansion. The encrypted server files told a vastly different story. Project Mirror wasn't a brand pitch. It was allegedly a 42-page tactical manual for the permanent relocation of the children to the state of Qatar. The metadata showed it had been in development for months. It outlined a multi-year media contract with a foreign sovereign fund granting exclusive access to the children's lives in exchange for dual citizenship through honorary sponsorship. This move would effectively bypass the legal jurisdictions of both the US and the UK. When the existence of this file was read into the record, the courtroom fell dead silent. Harry reportedly went pale. For years, he had defended his wife against the press, and now he was staring at a document suggesting she was preparing to take his children to a country where his parental rights would be nearly impossible to enforce. Meghan's attorneys desperately tried to spin it as a creative hypothetical, a mere brand exercise for a woman seeking refuge. But the flight logs told a different story. And as the truth about Project Mirror leaked to the public, the entire foundation of the Sussex empire began to violently cave in. The discovery of Project Mirror was devastating, but the paper trail that funded it was even more alarming. The money war went far deeper than maxed-out American Express cards and luxury handbags. It reached across oceans straight into the shadowy world of offshore finance. Digging through the redacted files, a document from the United States Treasury Financial Crimes Enforcement Network allegedly confirmed the existence of 2 Cayman Islands accounts. These weren't under Meghan or Harry's names. They were tied to a shell company called Echo Clover Limited, registered in the British Virgin Islands and reportedly controlled by an Archwell trustee. Between August and December of the previous year, these accounts allegedly received $890,000 in untraceable transfers from Dubai-based event organizers. None of this income appeared on the foundation's official tax reports, and none of it was on Meghan's individual declarations. When the palace caught wind of this financial black hole, they didn't just express mild concern. They triggered the Crown Transparency Statute, immediately forwarding the documents to the United Kingdom's Serious Fraud Office. Meghan's spokespeople scrambled, dismissing the findings as outdated structuring and arguing that she was simply building a financial shield against a hostile institution. But hiding nearly $1 million in a shell company doesn't look like a shield to a federal judge. It looks like a getaway fund. And as the IRS rumors began to swirl, the people who had protected Meghan for years finally started to back away. In the world of high-level celebrity, loyalty only lasts as long as your brand is profitable. And as the financial details leaked from the Santa Barbara courthouse, Meghan's future prospects began to completely disintegrate. Hollywood is a town built on PR, and suddenly the Sussex brand was too toxic to touch. Rumors wildly swirled through the entertainment industry that major corporate partners were frantically re-evaluating their ties. The most devastating blow was the alleged stalling of Meghan's highly anticipated solo project, a rumored media venture aggressively titled Woman Without a Crown. The fear among streaming executives wasn't just about the controversy of a custody battle. It was the absolute reputational nightmare of being tied to an organization under active investigation by both the UK Charities Commission and the US Office of Tax-Exempt Organizations. Early estimates from these joint investigations suggested the potential misappropriation of funds could be anywhere from $2.7 to $4.4 million. The narrative equity Meghan had spent years building was evaporating overnight. She wasn't just losing the PR war, she was losing the very industry that had given her a platform in the first place. While Meghan's Hollywood fortress was crumbling from the outside, Prince Harry was facing a brutal psychological reckoning on the inside. To truly understand the stakes of this courtroom war, you have to look at the emotional destruction left in its wake. For years, the couple's brand was built entirely on the concept of mutual healing, mental health advocacy, and protecting each other from the cold, unfeeling machinery of the monarchy. But in her 72-page rebuttal, Meghan allegedly took Harry's darkest moments and weaponized them against him. Her legal team cited 3 highly specific incidents between 2017 and 2019 where Harry allegedly disappeared for hours during high-profile family events alongside claims of erratic behavior. If these incidents truly happened the very year they were engaged, why were they only being brought up now, nearly a decade later? Harry's legal team, led by a powerhouse attorney, didn't just deny the claims, they anticipated them. They submitted a 17-page preemptive defense that painted a chillingly different picture. They revealed school withdrawal letters secretly signed by Meghan months prior without Harry's consent. They showed the court that while Meghan was accusing Harry of using the children for institutional PR, she was the one actively planning a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign centered entirely around their royal titles in the Middle East. Harry was forced to watch the woman he sacrificed his family for use his own past traumas as a legal battering ram. He was paralyzed, but his family back in London was not. The Crown was about to deploy a legal weapon so powerful it would rewrite international law. The British royal family does not fight in the mud, and they do not leak petty grievances to the tabloids. When they are threatened, they simply rewrite the rules of engagement. Inside the walls of the royal estate, Princess Anne reportedly convened a midnight session with the Sovereign Custodial Oversight Council. They didn't just discuss the legal implications of Project Mirror, they drafted a failsafe. It became known in inner circles as the Sandringham Declaration on Sovereign Minor Protections. This was an unprecedented ironclad document designed to ensure that no matter what passport the children held or what country they were secretly flown to, their undeniable status as blood heirs to the British Crown would trigger automatic international legal protections. It was a brilliant, terrifying checkmate. Meghan's entire Qatari escape plan relied on slipping the children into a jurisdiction that didn't recognize Western family law. The Sandringham Declaration effectively closed that loophole globally, ensuring that any foreign state aiding in the concealment of the royal children would face massive diplomatic and economic consequences from the United Kingdom and its allies. The Windsor machine had encircled Meghan completely. She was out of money, out of Hollywood allies, and suddenly out of legal loopholes. The trap was fully set. All that was left was the final judgment. The fallout from the Project Mirror revelation was absolutely catastrophic, not just in the courtroom, but across the entire Sussex empire. As whispers of the encrypted Qatari relocation files began circulating online, the ideological fault lines in America shifted almost overnight. The very media outlets that had fiercely defended the couple for years suddenly started to pull back. A scathing editorial even questioned why a self-proclaimed human rights advocate would seek legal sanctuary in a state with such vastly different views on sovereign guardianship. Public support, which once sat at a solid majority in key demographics, reportedly plummeted by half within just 48 hours. The public can often forgive a messy separation, but they have a visceral, unforgiving reaction to the idea of a parent secretly plotting to bypass a father's rights by moving children across the globe. Inside Archwell, the reaction was pure panic. The foundation, already fragile from years of famously high turnover, completely collapsed under the weight of the allegations. Former staffers, terrified of being implicated in a conspiracy to violate international custody laws, allegedly began cooperating with the court. 3 anonymous employees submitted sworn affidavits that poured gasoline on the fire. They claimed that Meghan's private marketing team had actually used joint foundation funds to pay for the Project Mirror research, burying the expenses under vague categories like global outreach development. One staffer's leaked statement was utterly damning, claiming they were told they were just following a visionary legacy, only to realize later it looked like an international crime. Within 24 hours of the filing, 3 senior executives, including the director of brand partnerships, resigned. Hollywood elites and major streaming partners also reportedly began reevaluating their upcoming contracts, fearing the reputational blowback of being tied to an active IRS audit and a global guardianship dispute. Meghan was suddenly fighting a war on 2 fronts: an aggressive legal battle against the crown and a desperate fight to keep her brand from disintegrating. But the real reckoning was still waiting for her in front of a judge. The air outside the Santa Barbara family law courthouse on the morning of February 18th was electric. The world was watching, and Prince Harry was finally ready to speak for himself, not as a duke, but as a father who had almost lost everything. When Meghan arrived, the usual fanfare of a global icon was completely absent. She was flanked by a massive legal team and a digital strategist, but there was no royal jewelry, no subtle Archwell branding, and no identifiable designer labels. She wore simple black slacks and a fitted blazer, adopting a uniform of defiant, studied silence. Inside Courtroom 4B, the atmosphere was freezing. Justice Maya Caldwell, a judge infamous for her icy precision in international family disputes, wasted zero time. The hearing was closed to the public, but the leaks that emerged hours later painted a picture of a total legal dismantling. The absolute centerpiece of the morning was the brutal forensic cross-examination of the Project Mirror metadata. Meghan's legal team desperately tried to stick to the hypothetical brand exercise defense, but the court-appointed experts brought forward evidence that was impossible to talk away. The files showed that Meghan had personally accessed the specific Middle Eastern school enrollment documents over a dozen times in a single week. Every time her lawyers tried to spin the narrative, the digital breadcrumbs trapped them. The power dynamic completely inverted right then and there. Meghan, who had entered the week as an aggressive litigator demanding $187,000 a month in spousal support, was now entirely on the defensive. She was no longer fighting for narrative equity or financial payouts. She was fighting to prove she wasn't an international flight risk. By the time the gavel finally fell, Justice Caldwell didn't just rule against the relocation. She issued an emergency order that changed the trajectory of the monarchy. The children's passports were to be surrendered immediately to a court-appointed third party. All digital contact between the children and their mother was mandated to be heavily monitored by a child welfare liaison. And in a moment that will go down in royal history, the judge reportedly looked directly at the woman who once occupied the highest echelons of British royalty and delivered a single devastating sentence: "You cannot weaponize motherhood and reject responsibility in the same breath." If Meghan had succeeded with Project Mirror, she would have created an entirely new kind of royal existence. It would have been a world where the children were the primary assets of a private media empire shielded by the sovereignty of a foreign state, while Harry was reduced to a distant memory. But the Windsor machine didn't let that happen. By simply outlasting her and waiting for her to overreach, they allowed her to provide the exact evidence they needed to end the war. As the dust settles on this 87-page forensic autopsy and the shattered custody treaties, we have to ask ourselves a difficult question. Was this explosive battle ever really about protecting the children, or was it simply a desperate fight for brand control, media dominance, and the ultimate Hollywood narrative? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the untold truths of the royal family.